The Joint Senate-House Committee on Congressional Ethics and Accountability had convened in a grand hearing room on Capitol Hill, the air thick with anticipation and the faint hum of overhead lights, casting long shadows across the polished wooden panels. Rows of spectators filled the gallery, a mix of journalists, staffers, and curious onlookers, while the committee members shuffled papers and adjusted microphones under the watchful eyes of C-SPAN cameras. It was meant to be a straightforward discussion on ethics reform, but from the moment Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota strode in, it was clear she had other plans. Flanked by a team of 4 sharp-suited attorneys and a communications aide clutching a tablet. She arrived early, her stack of bound documents towering like a fortress on the table before her. Omar, known for her bold rhetoric and unyielding advocacy, smoothed her hijab and scanned the room with a determined gaze. Her tailored pantsuit, a picture of professional poise. She shook hands with Democratic colleagues, exchanging knowing nods, while pointedly ignoring the Republicans across the aisle. The media buzzed quietly, sensing a confrontation brewing as whispers spread about her, prepared remarks aimed at dismantling her opponents one by one. Senator John Kennedy of Louisiana sat quietly at his seat, his posture relaxed yet attentive, dressed in a simple navy suit that spoke more to practicality than flash. His weathered leather briefcase resting unassumingly by his side. He nodded politely to a few familiar faces, but said little, his expression one of quiet observation as the room settled. The committee chair, a mild-mannered Democrat from Delaware, called the session to order with a gavel tap that barely cut through the tension. Before anyone could delve into the agenda, Omar seized the floor without waiting for formal recognition, her voice cutting through the space like a knife. "Ladies and gentlemen of the committee," she began, her Minnesota accent crisp and commanding. "Before we waste time on procedural nonsense, let's address the real issue here, the hypocrisy staring us in the face." She turned her gaze directly to Kennedy, her eyes narrowing. "Senator Kennedy, with your drawling, folksy charm and your endless stories about small-town life, you pretend to be the voice of everyday Americans. But let's be honest, you're just another Southern elitist out of touch with the real struggles of immigrants, minorities, and working families who don't have the luxury of your insulated world." The gallery murmured, a ripple of surprise spreading as heads turned toward Kennedy. Omar pressed on her words, gaining momentum. "You talk about ethics while cozying up to corporate donors who exploit the very people you claim to champion. How ethical is it to jet off to high-dollar fundraisers, sipping champagne with big pharma executives, while families in Louisiana scrape by without health care? Your so-called plain-spoken style is nothing but a mask for indifference, a way to dodge accountability for policies that hurt the vulnerable." She paused for effect, letting the accusations hang in the air, her team exchanging satisfied glances as a few Democrats nodded in agreement. The room erupted into a low buzz, reporters scribbling notes furiously, and the chair rapped his gavel lightly, calling for order. But Omar wasn't done. She leaned forward, her voice rising with passion. "We've seen this act before." Senator, a politician hiding behind anecdotes instead of facing facts. "If this committee is about ethics, start with your own." She referenced past hearings where Kennedy had grilled nominees with his signature wit, quoting one of his famous lines back at him mockingly. "As you once said, just be yourself, unless you suck. Well, maybe it's time to take your own advice." The gallery stirred again, some chuckling nervously, others whispering about the boldness of the attack. Omar continued drawing on her reputation for challenging the status quo, accusing Kennedy of using his Southern plain talk to deflect from real issues like labor protections and foreign policy missteps. "You rail against government overreach, but where were you when communities like mine in Minnesota needed support against exploitation? Your quips might make headlines, but they don't feed families or protect rights." The C-SPAN feed captured every moment, the Chiron already scrolling with sensational headlines like Omar calls out Kennedy in fiery opening. The chair intervened weakly. Order, please, Representative Omar. This hearing is about ethics reform, not personal barbs. But Omar laughed it off a sound, sharp and devoid of humor, replying, ethics start with calling out hypocrisy, Mr. Chairman. Let's discuss the ethics of a senator who charms the room with folksy sayings while voting against measures that help marginalized groups. She pulled out a document from her stack, waving it for emphasis. Here's a record of your votes against expanding healthcare access, against stronger worker protections. Is that the small-town values you preach? The tension was palpable now, with Republican members shifting uncomfortably and Democrats watching warily, unsure if this was